And then if we move to the next slide, can you talk a little bit about what we're seeing on this slide?
Again, it's a summary of search activity of interest observed in the lollytimeforever@gmail.com account from March 7th, 2019 through December 14th, 2019.
And that lollytimeforever@gmail, did you determine who the associated user is?
Lori Vallow.
And on this first search, can you talk about what we're seeing there?
May 7th, 2019, malachite.
I think you've already talked about the malachite. I believe you said that's a stone that was that ended up in Chad and Lori's wedding bands or wedding
That's
rings.
correct, yes.
And when we look at the date there, was that date significant to you?
May 7th, May 7th?
Well, I guess let me ask it this way. On May 7th, was Tammy still alive?
Yes, both Charles and Tammy were still alive at this point.
And the next search, if you could talk about the date and what that one is.
July 21st, 2019, Gerber Life Policy, Life Insurance for Children, the Grow Up Plan.
And what was it about that search that stood out?
We found it of interest seeing as how children were missing and she was searching for life insurance for children.
And to be clear, through the investigation, did you ever determine if life insurance had been purchased for the children?
No, we did not.
And to the best of your knowledge, there was no life insurance?
No.
And the next search there and the date?
July 26, 2019, Phoenix Pet Services, Craigslist, Self-Service Dog, Little Angel Service Dogs for Sale, and Offer Up Phoenix.
And there's several searches there.
Correct.
And they appear to be in relation to a service dog.
That's correct.
Why did that stand out to you in this case?
JJ had a service dog at the time, and this search occurred roughly 2 weeks after the death of Charles Vallow. So to attempt to sell a service dog for a child after the death of his father seemed of interest to us.
And again, to be clear, JJ was still alive on July 26th.
He was, yes.
And the next search there?
August 25th, 2019, wedding bands made of malachite.
And I think we've talked a little bit about this. Did that stand out to you for the same reason?
It did, although at this point, Charles Vallow is no longer alive.
Was Tammy Daybell still alive?
She was.
And the next search?
September 20th, 2019, Kennedy Elementary, Rexburg, Idaho phone number and define possess.
And then if we also look at that next search, can you read the date on that one?
September 24th, 2019, Kennedy Elementary, Rexburg, Idaho phone number.
So for both the September 20th and September 24th, looking at that common search for the Kennedy Elementary phone number, why did that catch your attention?
We believe that JJ died around the 22nd, 23rd. So these searches would have bookended that death.
And do you know where JJ was enrolled in school around the time of his death?
At Kennedy Elementary in Rexburg, Idaho.
And on the 20th, there was that one additional search, define possess. What was it about that stood out?
Similarly to the first Ned Schneider searches that also included that possession, the concept of possession and deaths sort of going hand in hand was of interest.
And this search occurred 2 to 3 days before, or I guess 2 to 3 days before JJ's last seen alive.
That's correct.
And then if we move down to the September 30th one, can you talk a little bit about that?
How to get the back seat out of my Jeep Wrangler. Jeep Wrangler JK rear seat removal, how to DIY. Yeah. Rear seat removal, how to DIY -YouTube.
And it looks like there's essentially two searches there.
The way that it's written, it looks like it was probably a search and then clicking on like a YouTube link to show this,
Okay.
if I remember correctly.
And what was it about that that stood out to you?
Tylee Ryan had a Jeep Wrangler as her everyday car. At this point, she is no longer alive, or her last proof of life has passed. On September 30th, well, on October 2nd, Brandon Boudreaux is shot at from a Jeep Wrangler from somebody in the backseat or the rear area of a Jeep Wrangler in Arizona. So the search of how to get the backseat out of my Jeep Wrangler by Lori, who has access to a Jeep Wrangler. Alex Cox is believed to have been the one that attempted to shoot Brandon Boudreaux, who would have had access to this Jeep Wrangler. Additionally, on October 2nd, there's a video of a storage unit in Idaho where Chad and Lori are on surveillance video storing a tire, like a spare tire, and what looks like the back seat of a Jeep or some sort of vehicle in a storage unit just a few days after this search.
And then if we move to the next search.
October 2nd, 2019, Gilbert, Arizona News.
What stood out about that search?
Brandon Boudreaux was shot at in Gilbert, Arizona on October 2nd.
And then the final search on here?
October 22nd, 2019, wedding dresses in Kauai.
And why did that search or those searches draw your attention?
The search was, again, wedding planning. And then also it's just days after Tammy's death and the same date as her funeral.
And when you say just days after Tammy's death, do you know the day Tammy was pronounced dead?
October 19th, 2019.
So just 3 days after Tammy's death.
That's correct.
Oh, that's okay.
And you also indicated this search was done on the same day as Tammy's funeral.
That's correct.
Do you know if Chad and Lori ultimately ended up getting married?
They did.
Do you know approximately when?
In early November.
If I may have just a moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
Your Honor, I have no further questions at this time.
All right, thank you, Ms. Blake. Mr. Pryor, cross-examination.
Thank you, Judge.
Morning. Well, I'm not sworn, so probably I'm tactical specialist is my title. TS if it's easier.
Mr. Pryor, your microphone's not working.
All right, Judge.
There you go.
Blake pulled one on me here.
Okay.
Turned off the phone, microphone. So you're not so how would you like me to refer to you again? I'm sorry.
Tactical specialist is my title.
Okay. Is there an easier, so
TS or
T.S. Heidemann, would that be fair?
that works, yes.
Okay. Okay. So, T.S. Heidemann, it sounds from your testimony that you've spent a considerable amount of time going over the evidence in this case.
That's correct, sir.
And you've familiarized yourself with a variety of topics. Those would include what happened in Arizona, right? What happened with Brandon Boudreaux?
Correct.
Okay, and what has happened here in terms of the facts and information? You spent a bit of time, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So you're also aware that Chad Daybell is not implicated criminally in the death of Charles Vallow, Lori Vallow's fourth husband, correct?
That's correct.
And you're also aware that Chad Daybell is not criminally implicated in the attempted murder of Brandon Boudreaux in where Brandon Boudreaux was shot, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, all right. So before I get into the gist of what I'm going to talk to you about, I noticed that there's an FBI representative in the court today, and that he has been here on a number of occasions watching the testimony. I can't attest to the specific number, but I know he's been here several times. Is that your officer supervisor that's here supervising your testimony?
He's not my direct supervisor, but I do work with him, yes.
Okay, so what is he here for?
Observation,
Okay.
just to observe the,
And at any time prior to your testimony, did you discuss with this FBI person anything you were going to say today, since he's been watching the testimony for several days?
we have not discussed it in, I mean, he's been a part of the investigation for quite a while, so he knows of it, but we haven't discussed in detail what I'm testifying to now.
And I appreciate you saying it that way. When you say he hasn't discussed it with me in detail, what I really want to know is he discussed it with you at all in any regard, in any capacity since since this trial started.
Your Honor, I'm going to object on relevance and beyond the scope of direct.
All right, well, the issue goes to the exclusionary order, and we need to just get to that point, Mr. Pryor, as to whether or not you believe there's been any violation of that.
And in essence, Judge, what I'm asking is whether she's in any regard spoken to that representative of the FBI about this case.
You can ask the question.
That's the question I'm asking. Judge.
About this case, yes, we have spoken about this case.
And when did you speak?
Over the last 4 years,
Okay.
4.5 years.
Did you speak in the last week during the testimony of this case?
Possibly. I don't remember off the top of my head if we had any other than if I was going to testify or
Okay.
timing.
And what I'm concerned about is this, is that he's not your direct supervisor, right?
That's correct.
And there's no need to report to him, right?
It's a code situation. I don't necessarily need to report to him, but I do, as a courtesy, I am on his squad, but I have a different direct supervisor. So as a courtesy, I like to let him know if I'm
Okay.
in the office
All
or
right.
not. Yes.
And I'm going to move on. I just wanted to actually, part of that was the judge's exclusionary rule and whether or not you folks are communicating about this case. And your answer is maybe a little bit, but not in any significant way, right?
Not in any significant way, not beyond what we've talked about in the last 4+ years now.
And even though this FBI officer isn't your direct supervisor, you're just talking in general about this case, right?
I can't say in the last week or so if we have or not any details. Nothing that stands out, no.
Okay, so you don't remember whether you talked to somebody or not in the last week about a very important case in your life. Is that what you're telling
Your
me?
Honor, I'm going to object as argumentative and asked and answered.
Sustained.
Now, you identify that you were looking into attribution information and looking for Google searches as it related to this case, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, now you know the circumstances regarding J.J. Vallow's death, correct?
As much as I can.
Much
yes.
as you can,
Yeah.
right? And you have an approximate date as to when you believe J.J. Vallow was killed, right?
Correct.
And what date was that?
Well, the last proof of life was September 22nd, 2019 in the morning. We have a photo that date. So somewhere between then and approximately September 23rd.
All right, so the afternoon of September 22nd until the morning of September 23rd, correct? Is that fair?
Yeah, morning, early afternoon, correct. Yes.
Morning, early afternoon of September 23rd.
I don't remember the exact time.
Oh, it's
but Yes,
okay.
those time frames.
Well, this is a problem. Our court reporter is never going to be able to keep up when you're talking at the same time and you're both actually doing it. So please wait for an answer, wait for a new question, and don't talk over each other. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So if and please don't let me misrepresent your testimony. You believe that J.J. Vallow was murdered the afternoon of September 22nd up until either late morning or sometime early September 23rd, correct?
That's correct.
And at the time, are you aware of the 4 people who were around JJ Vallow at that specific time?
What 4 people? I'm sorry, I don't understand.
Well, that's what I'm trying to get to. You're aware that JJ Vallow was allegedly murdered either in an apartment of Lori Vallow's or a close proximity to that. You agree with that, right?
I don't know that we know exactly where he was killed, no.
Okay. But you do know that JJ Vallow was being watched by Alex Cox that day and that evening of the 22nd, correct?
Partially, yes.
Okay. And you know that Melanie Gibb was there on the evening of the 22nd at Lori Vallow's apartment, correct?
That is correct, yes.
And you know that David Warwick was there on the 22nd on the evening of the day or the day that JJ Vallow was murdered, right?
Yes,
Okay. And so we have Lori Vallow, correct? On that day?
yes,
Alex Cox on that day, correct?
correct,
Melanie Gibb on that day, correct?
correct,
David Warwick on that day, correct?
correct.
So I'm having some difficulty with you bringing up these Google searches. And this is why I'm having some difficulty is you're talking today about searching these people's and talking about events, and we'll get to these events in a minute. I don't see any Google searches on Melanie Gibb or David Warwick. And why is that?
Your Honor, I'm going to object as argumentative.
Overruled.
Why don't I have any Google search information on Melanie Gibb or David Warwick?
I'm not aware if, I don't know off the top of my head if any legal process was served on those individuals or not.
Well, and this is what I'm having some difficulty with. This is what I'm struggling with.
Your Honor, objection to the narrative. If he wants to ask a question.
I'll sustain that. Just
Okay.
questions, Mr. Pryor.
Okay. Well, if David Warwick and Melanie Gibb were present for the murder of JJ Vallow, why aren't we looking into their Google searches?
I don't actually write the search warrant, sir, so
Okay.
I'm not sure if they were, who would have done that.
Okay. But it's common knowledge that they were at least there, right?
For a partial time, yes,
Right. Okay.
yes.
Okay. Now, you're also aware as part of your investigation that, and we can discuss when we think this took place, but Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow were having a relationship, correct?
Yes, sir.
And they were engaged in a romantic relationship.
Yes, sir.
And it may have been when Charles Vallow was alive. It may have been after that, but we do know that after Charles Vallow's death, Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell were in a relationship.
That's correct.
And Chad was still married to Tammy Daybell at that time, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. When someone's in a relationship and you're looking at Google searches, could some of these Google searches be explained that he's trying to hide his extramarital affair with Lori Vallow?
I'm sorry, I don't quite understand the.
Well, let me go over it this way. You saw on 3/6 of 2019, May 6th of 2019. Would you like me to put this up so we can look at this? Would that be easier for you?
Sure. Yeah.
Oh. Now tell me how I operate this. That's going to be a problem.
Which exhibit is this?
Judge, I don't have the number on it. It was what Ms. Blake was just talking to as part of the attribution and the Googles.
That 184A?
I think so.
Okay, 184A, then I'll note, not the PowerPoint, but the printout copy can be displayed to the witness and published for cross-exam.
And please excuse me, at my age, technology is just getting hooked up to Bluetooth is a challenge for me. So we're looking at 3/6 of 2019, right?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Now, before I start, one of the things I have some difficulty with is we don't know who did these Google searches, right?
Correct. I cannot say that I witnessed Chad Daybell type these into a search bar, but somebody with access to the Chad Daybell account
So if there was,
conducted searches, yes.
Judge, I'll pause. I'm sorry. The next question's already in my head and it's just getting it to spit out and I'll try to control myself a little bit. So you put this off of a computer at Chad Daybell's house, right?
I reviewed a search warrant return from Google is what I
Okay.
was looking at. So not the computer directly, no.
So other than the time when Tammy Daybell passed away, are you aware that there were 3 or 4 other people who were living in Chad Daybell's house at the time?
I don't know. I think at least one child, but there could have been more. It's possible,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. So we don't know who actually did these searches, right?
Or I don't know from what device these were searched. No, I mean, it could have been a phone. You could be logging into from different devices, correct?
Okay. So I want to start, and we'll deal with the Ned Schneider ones in a minute here. 3/6/2019. Tammy Daybell's still alive, right?
Yes.
Now, I'm looking at that, and on 3/6/2019, Chad Daybell was already in this relationship with Lori Vallow, right?
Correct.
So, and I don't want you don't have to say what you're thinking, but it looks like June 26th star sign are Cancer, lead compatible, and Leo compatible. And also May 4 sign Taurus and Leo compatible. That's what that is, right?
Correct.
And what your testimony said is that it looks like someone's trying to see whether, if we assume that it's Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell in the Cancer and Leo, right? That's what you're sort of implying to this jury, isn't it?
Well, based on the birth dates, May
Right.
4th and June 26th, correct? Yes.
Okay. And based on the birth dates, May 4th of Taurus and Leo compatible as well, right? On March 6th.
Yes.
So if someone is trying to find out and is involved in an extramarital relationship, and you're Googling whether or not your current spouse or your new girlfriend are compatible, that would be a reasonable explanation, would it not?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then we go back and look at the malachite, eBay malachite jewelry on May 5, right?
Correct.
Okay. And if you're talking to someone that you're having an extramarital affair, and they encourage you to say, oh, someday maybe we could be together. I love malachite. And she starts dropping hints. That could be an explanation for that as well, right?
It could, but I believe that Chad's malachite searches began before Lori's.
Oh, but I understand the searches.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
I understand that. But why don't you show me the phone records where they talked about malachite and that Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell discussed the issue of malachite? Did you see any of those?
I can't remember if they were in any text messages or not, but ultimately they purchased wedding bands that were malachite wedding bands. Yes.
Okay. Okay. And were you also aware that during this time, there was discussion with Alex Cox and Zuluma Pastenes about malachite as well?
I don't remember off the top of my head. No, sir.
Okay. All right. So we don't know whether this search for malachite was a discussion between a boyfriend and a girlfriend, or whether or not it was about Alex Cox and his future marriage to Zuluma Pastenes, right?
Objection, Your Honor. States facts not in evidence and argumentative.
Sustained.
Now, the Ned Schneider issue. Again, when was Charles Vallow murdered by Lori Vallow and Alex Cox?
July 11th, 2019.
Okay. So there was a discussion about this. And the first time you ever heard about Ned Schneider was when Charles Vallow brought it up in an audio recording about his wife at the time, correct?
I believe that's correct, somewhere in
And
early
the-
January.
And the date of that was when?
I don't have the exact date of the body cam recordings or the police reports, but it's I believe it's pretty close to this time frame.
Prior to that time frame, right?
Yeah, right in that general time frame.
Okay. So, and in that general time frame, there was a discussion of Ned Schneider, right?
Yes, sir.
And at that point, it's your position that Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell were involved in an extramarital affair at that point.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you happen to look into the fact that Charles Vallow and Lori Vallow called off their divorce and tried to reconcile their marriage in February of 2019?
Yes, I do remember that. I don't remember the time frame, but that sounds probably pretty close. Yeah.
You don't remember exactly when in February, but they did attempt a reconciliation and basically tried to renew their relationship, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the idea of Ned Schneider, you didn't see anything else in Chad Daybell prior to January 28th of 2019, did you?
Did I see anything
With Ned Schneider and Chad Daybell making any look into what Ned Schneider was all about, right? Prior to this?
prior to, no, this was, I believe was the first search, at least in this time frame,
Okay.
that Ned Schneider appeared in Chad's Google searches.
Okay. So at that point, we can't make any assumptions, obviously, right?
No.
Okay. But we do know that as far as you're concerned, on the 28th of January, 2019, somehow Chad Daybell learned about the topic of Ned Schneider and decided to do a Google search and see what that was all about, right?
Objection, Your Honor, misstates the testimony.
Overruled. You can answer.
I don't know if he learned of it or if he was doing searches. He did searches for various individuals pretty frequently.
Right.
This is the only one that we found that had connection to other pieces of evidence in the case.
And you just led into my next question, and thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
Because when I reviewed all of this evidence, I saw that it was not uncommon when a topic came up for someone who was using that computer to do a search on a number of different topics. That would be fair, wouldn't it?
Absolutely.
Okay. So if he were to learn about the name Ned Schneider, it would be consistent with his or whoever was using that computer to Google it and see what it was all about. Would that be fair?
Potentially, I can't speak of when he learned that name or if he was
Okay.
searching it like he was a lot of other names. I'm not sure the
Right.
the order of that, no.
But his history shows that there's a lot of inquiry into various names, various topics, and that was something that was going on that computer quite frequently. Hundreds of thousands of searches, right?
Certainly lots of searches, yes.
Right, right. And then we go down to malachite, and we don't know where he got the name malachite from, but then he started searching that as well, right?
Correct.
And then he got to Hiplos, and we don't know what the story is on Hiplos, but he typed in that name, so he must have got the name from somewhere and started as that, right?
Correct.
And then you get down to 7/19 of 2019. Now, when you say you surprise someone with accusations, we don't know who typed that in, right?
Again, somebody, I can't say specifically, but somebody with access to the chad.daybell@gmail.com account.
So it could be someone's trying to learn about how you react when a spouse finds out that you're cheating on her, right?
Yes, it could be.
Okay. And we don't know who did the south-southwest wind and what is the definition of that, right?
Again, all I can say is it was somebody with access to that account.
Right. And when you're talking about the day before the accusation is, or the prosecutors claiming that may have been the day that Tylee Ryan was put in the ground on 9/9, but you're also aware that on 9/9, Chad Daybell sent an email to his wife at the time, Tammy Daybell, and said, I'm going to burn some limbs in the backyard the next day, right?
I believe that that text message was sent on the 9th that he said he
Right.
wanted to burn, yes,
Yeah.
burn limbs, yeah.
Right. So on the 8th, he's checking the wind. And on the 9th, he sends an email to his wife saying, I'm going to burn some limbs in the backyard. Right?
Correct.
Okay. And then Rhode Island area code. Now, you don't know what kind of phones we're dealing with. These aren't like track phones, are they? Or do you know what kind of phones these are?
I believe they might actually be track phones.
Go ahead.
No, that's,
Oh, you believe they are all track phones, right?
I don't remember off the top of my head. I mean, so track phone is kind of a provider. So if you're asking like, is it an iPhone or an Android? I'm not,
Right.
yeah.
But the track phone, the way that works, and if you don't know, please tell me if you don't have knowledge of this, but the way the track phone works is you buy the phone for a period of 90 days. It expires and you could either buy another phone rather inexpensively, or you have to buy the adding the minutes thing. And there's no real discernible difference in the cost, right?
Correct. Yeah, you can keep the phone and change the number, correct?
Right. Or you can just get a different phone and same thing. And you buy that at, I don't want to give anybody publicity, but large retail stores that sell a lot of groceries and other things, right?
Yes.
You know what we're talking about.
Yes.
Okay. So if you're having an affair with somebody and you don't want to get discovered that you're having this affair with another woman while you're still married, it wouldn't be illogical for you to buy a number of phones. And as the phones expire, you just buy another phone to sort of protect yourself from being discovered that you're having this affair. Would that be fair?
Correct. I mean, in this
Okay.
situation, he's not buying phones. It's changed. It's the same phone. The IMEI number stayed the same on all of them. So
Right.
the device didn't change, but the phone number did. Yes.
Okay.
Same idea.
So that would be, he's trying, it's possible that what he's trying to do is he's trying to cover up the fact that he doesn't want to be discovered by his wife, that he's cheating on her, right?
Correct.
Okay. And Judge, if I can, ask the court again, the number for the summary of search activity with Lolly time with Lori Vallow, what that exhibit was again?
It's 184A.
If I have permission, Judge, may I have permission to publish?
You can publish that page, which is a printed copy of the PowerPoint presentation.
So again, we see the subject of malachite and whoever is on Lolly time, whether it's Lori Vallow or whatever, is doing that, correct?
Correct.
Now, this is what is interesting to me on 7/21 of 2019. Okay?
Objection, Your Honor. Again, there's a narrative. I'd move to strike and counsel and ask that he ask a question.
Yeah.
I'll ask him.
It is sustained, and Mr. Pryor, please refrain from that. It's just
Okay.
questions.
All right. So 7/21 of 2019. And my notes seem to indicate that you said that was a short time after Lori Vallow and Alex Cox murdered Charles Vallow. Is that fair?
Yes, that would have been approximately 10 days after Charles's death.
Okay. And prior to Lori Vallow moving to Idaho, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So you know from the facts, and you familiarized yourself with the Charles Vallow case, right?
That's correct.
And you know from the facts that at the time Charles Vallow was murdered, Lori Vallow was there, wasn't she?
At approximately the same time. I don't know the exact timing. I know she left
Right.
at a certain point, but I don't know exactly the time frame. Yes.
Well, you know that after the murder, that Lori Vallow was interviewed in front of the house right after the murder.
That's correct. Yes.
You also know that she left a little bit of time because prior to the murder, Tylee Ryan was present and so was JJ Vallow at the time, or at around the circumstances relating to the murder of Charles Vallow, correct?
Correct.
So it seems then that at least Tylee Ryan and JJ Vallow would have knowledge or at least information as it relates to the murder of Charles Vallow. Would that seem logical?
Yes, it would.
Okay. So if someone's looking and realizing that their children witnessed the murder of their father by their own brother. That's a motive for a number of things, right?
I suppose.
Okay. It's also a motive on 7/21 of 2019 to come up with a reason to get rid of a child if that child witnessed the murder of their stepfather, correct?
Potentially.
Okay, potentially?
I don't know if they saw that. I believe that Lori and the children left. I think if I understand right, there's a bit of discrepancy about if the kids were actually there
Right.
to witness the shooting, but I thought that they left prior to the actual shooting.
Well, you
But
did,
they listened to there was an argument, yes.
and there's
correct.
a discussion because part of the FBI and the officers down there interviewed witnesses who suggested both sides of that issue, correct?
Correct. I don't know if we know. I mean, Tylee obviously isn't here to ask, so we're not sure what exactly she saw at the
Yeah.
time.
So we don't know what JJ saw. We don't know what Tylee saw because the evidence goes both ways in terms of what exactly did they see in regards to the murder of Charles Vallow, right?
I believe Tylee was interviewed, and I don't recall what her interview stated,
Okay.
but I don't remember about JJ.
Okay. But you also know that one of Tylee's very close friends was interviewed and provided information about what Tylee said as well, right?
I don't remember that, but
Okay.
that makes sense. Yes.
Yeah. So then that's why there's some discussion because we don't know exactly where Tylee was when Dallas Cox murdered Charles Vallow, right?
Correct.
Okay. So Lori Vallow, before she comes to Idaho on 7/21 of 2019, searches a life insurance policy for her children. Okay. Now there's no equal discussion I didn't see it and I went looked at the stuff. I didn't see anything where Chad Daybell talked about life insurance for the children. He didn't, did he?
No, sir.
And there's no email or search on let's kill 2 kids, right? By Chad Daybell?
No.
Okay. And would you agree with me that part of the rationale of bringing up Hiplos and James and Elena is because of the religious connotation, right?
Not necessarily the religious connotation. It just provides some context in other evidence because of the aliases, and it gets complicated with the
Okay.
names that they call each other.
Right.
So to see that they're being searched by these individuals and to provide context for later of
Okay.
where these names are coming from.
Okay. Now, so we have some references to religion, calling each other religious names. And you're aware that both of these folks have strong religious beliefs.
Yes, sir.
And you're aware Melanie Gibb has strong religious beliefs.
Yes, sir.
David Warwick has strong religious beliefs.
Yes, sir.
Zaluma Pastenes, Alex's wife, strong religious beliefs.
Yes.
In fact, the circle of all these people, there's repeated references to religion, right?
Absolutely.
Strong references to religion.
Yes.
Okay. So I guess what I'm kind of wondering, is it a bigger motive to kill 2 kids by their mother and brother to cover up the murder of a 4th husband? Or is it because they killed the kids because Chad, Lori, Melanie Gibb, and David Warwick and Zaluma Pastenes have strong religious beliefs? Which one is a greater motive to murder children?
Objection, Your Honor, argumentative.
Sustained.
9/30 of 2019. How to get the back seat out of a Jeep. And that's Lori Vallow, right?
Yes, sir.
There's nothing about Chad Daybell trying to figure out how to get the back seat out of a Jeep, right?
No, sir.
And I guess if a girlfriend asks you to help me get a tire because somebody wants to use the Jeep, that would explain why Chad was helping his girlfriend load and unload a tire, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Gilbert, Arizona News on the day that Brandon Boudreaux, and you've previously testified that Brandon Boudreaux Chad Daybell is not criminally implicated in anything with Brandon Boudreaux, correct?
He's not being charged, correct, sir?
He's what?
He's not being charged.
Right,
in
not
Arizona,
being
correct,
charged, not
yes.
being pursued for anything for any reason. But
Objection, Your Honor. That misstates the testimony.
Sustained. And again, counsel, try to let the witness finish her response before you get into another question, please.
Your Honor, and I would move to strike counsel's last statement.
I'll strike that. I'll instruct the jurors not to consider that last statement.
okay, so your comment is Chad Daybell has not been charged. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Did you see a likewise Google search on Chad Daybell's Google account that talked about Gilbert, Arizona on that day?
Not that I recall.
Okay. And then you're aware that that on 10/22 of 2019, are you aware that Lori Vallow was in Hawaii by herself with a friend?
Yes.
And you were aware that her friend was Audrey?
Yes, Audrey and maybe Melanie Boudreaux. I know there was some shuffling there, but I don't remember the exact time frame. But
Right.
yes.
But they were, about 10/22 of 2019, Lori Vallow and a couple of friends went to Hawaii and I believe they were in Kauai, I remember. Is that fair?
I don't remember what island, but yes, that sounds fair.
But the purpose of them being there was to start the process of getting a wedding dress for Audrey Boudreaux, right?
I do not know that. No, sir.
Okay. But the three of them were there, right?
Yes.
Okay. You just don't know why they were there and what they were doing there on that day, right?
Yeah, it seemed like kind of a spontaneous.
So if Audrey
Right.
Boudreaux was looking for a wedding dress on 10/22 of 2009.
Your Honor, objection. Counsel's stating facts not in evidence.
Yeah, there's no Audrey Boudreaux, Mr. Pryor.
I'm sorry, Judge.
Audrey Boudreaux.
Baratori, Judge. I'm sorry. I said Boudreaux. It's Baratori. I got the name wrong.
Fair.
No. Is that the correct name?
Audrey Baratiero or
Baratiero.
Melanie Boudreaux. Yeah.
I got them backwards.
They both were in Hawaii, but yeah, I'm not sure which one you were.
With her.
Correct. I think some of them overlapped, but at different times. I don't know on 10/22 exactly off the top of my head now.
Right. And you don't know, and you don't have facts one way or the other as to whether or not on that particular day they were looking for wedding dresses, right?
I don't, other than that search, no.
Okay. Judge, I think that's all I have. Thank you.
All right. Ms. Blake, redirect.
Thank you, Your Honor. We'll start with the last question. You were asked about Audrey Baratario and searching for wedding dresses. Are you aware if Audrey's married?
At the time, I don't believe she was, no.
Anything in your investigation or records you reviewed that showed she was engaged?
I believe she'd mentioned, or I don't think she was actually married, no. I'm trying to remember now. I don't think she was.
And you were asked about the attempted shooting of Brandon Boudreaux. And I think you indicated Chad has not been charged in that. Is that correct?
That's my understanding, yes.
And in relation to Charles Vallow, Chad has not been charged. Is that correct?
Yeah, I believe so, yes.
Are you still part of any active investigation in those cases?
Am I on to testify in those cases?
Are you assisting in any further investigation if there is any going on?
No,
And those are being handled by agencies in Arizona. Is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
So all you can say right now is that Chad hasn't been charged.
Yeah, I haven't really followed that portion of it, no, other than what was included in this investigation, yes.
You were asked about those Ned Snyder searches. Are you aware through your investigation who designated Charles as Ned?
I guess Lori calls Charles Ned is the first time where you sort of hear that on the body cam footage. Charles is relaying that Lori refers to him as Ned. I don't know where that name comes from, no. I don't know if she brought it up or if Chad gave her that name. I don't know how that worked.
And the searches from Chad were being done around the same time Charles is reporting that Lori's calling him Ned Schneider.
It's around the same time, yes.
You were asked about the potential for someone else to use Chad's email to do some searches.
Potentially, yes.
Did you find any searches in related to that email, to Chad's email regarding divorce or separation?
Not that I recall.
You were also asked about people changing phone numbers to hide an affair.
Yes,
Are there, in your experience, do people involved in criminal activity also switch phone numbers?
yes.
And then there was some talk about Melanie. Actually, let me back up. There was some extensive discussion regarding the killing of Charles Vallow and where JJ and Tylee were. Do you know where they were at the time Charles was actually shot?
I don't believe they were there. I believe the report said that Lori took the children to, I think they went to Burger King or something. But I don't know if that was corroborated or not.
And we'd talked about the phone attribution earlier, and with one of Chad's numbers, you'd made reference to attributing that number to him in part because of a mortuary call. Do you recall that?
Yes,
And that call to the mortuary, do you recall what day that took place?
I believe it's July 11th, 2019,
And when was Charles killed?
the same day.
And do you know where the mortuary was located that he placed that call to?
In Arizona, but I don't remember which city.
And Charles was killed in Arizona?
That's correct.
Then you were asked quite a bit about Melanie Gibb and David Warwick. Their names came up at least. Is that fair?
Yes.
Did Melanie, through your investigation, did you determine whether, or was there anything to indicate Melanie Gibb or David Warwick profited from JJ's death?
Judge, objection goes beyond the scope.
Overruled.
I did not learn of anything why they would benefit from JJ's death now.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
All right. I don't believe that opened any doors for additional recross. Did you have anything, Mr. Pryor?
Judge, I would have a couple subjects, but if the court's determination is that there's nothing open for recross, I'll defer to the court's wisdom.
All right, that'll conclude then the testimony of this witness. Practical Agent Heidemann, you are done testifying. Is this witness going to be recalled, do you believe?
She is going to be recalled by the state. I'm not sure if she's being recalled by the defense.
Not by the defense, Judge.
Okay, since you are going to be recalled, I'll just remind you, there is an exclusionary order in place. You're not permitted to discuss your testimony or review the testimony of other witnesses in the case in between now and the time that you're recalled. If you don't comply with that order, you may be prohibited from further testimony, so please comply with that.
Sure.
All right. You can go ahead and step down then, and I'll inquire of the state momentarily as to who they will be calling as their next witness.